Hello and welcome to this week's edition of World Today, where we'll take you through the top focus, November 3rd, US elections and the race for America. But also on the show, an exclusive interview with the Special Coordinator for Tibet Issues of Trump administration, who will speak to us on Tibet and China's plans for Tibet. On the 29th of October, France was jolted by yet another terror attack. This time, a knife-wielding man went on a rampage in a church in the city of Nice, killing 3 people, including an elderly woman. This is the third such attack in 2 months in France. Here's a report.
The French city of Nice is mourning. On 29th of October, 3 people were killed in a knife attack in what is now suspected as religious terror attack.
Bien, mesdames, messieurs, une fois encore, notre pays a été frappé par une attaque terroriste islamiste.
The police claim the attacker, a 21-year-old Tunisian national who had recently entered France, beheaded a woman and killed 2 other people in the church on Thursday morning before being shot and detained by the police. The Nice attack comes nearly 2 weeks after a school teacher was beheaded near Paris for showing a cartoon of Prophet Muhammad in his class. Since then, France has seen many protests in support of free speech.
Il ne fait aucun doute que l'auteur de ces actes, qui n'a cessé de répéter en boucle devant nous Allahu Akbar alors qu'il était médicalisé sur place, quel était le sens de son geste.
The French President Emmanuel Macron has now promised a crackdown on Islamist extremism and claimed France was engaged in an existential battle against radical Islamic ideologies and separatism.
Si nous sommes attaqués, une fois encore, c'est pour les valeurs qui sont les nôtres, pour notre goût de la liberté, pour cette possibilité sur notre sol de croire librement et de ne céder à aucun esprit de terreur. Et je le dis avec beaucoup de clarté une fois encore aujourd'hui, nous n'y céderons rien.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan went so far as to call the French president a madman who needed mental help. This prompted France to call back its envoy from Ankara. Meanwhile, Pakistan claimed Macron is spreading Islamophobia. The impact is economic too. Many Islamic nations across the world have started boycotting French products and carrying massive rallies against France. In India, there have been protests against President Macron because of the harsh words he had used to describe fanatical supporters of Islam. The government of India officially extended its support and sympathies to the Republic of France.
This is a World Today exclusive. In a post-COVID-19 scenario, the world is waking up to Chinese aggression and aggressive China trying to take on all its neighboring nations. But what is of particular importance to India and the United States of America is the situation within China, be it Xinjiang or, for that matter, Tibet. There are labor camps that now are coming up in Tibet, reports of over 500,000 Tibetans being pushed into forced labor. In such a scenario, the United States of America has come out with a strong message to China by appointing a special coordinator for Tibet issues, Assistant Secretary Robert Destro. For the first time in history, the US State Department invited the head of the Tibetan government in exile, Dr. Lobsang Sangay, to the State Department building. That in itself is a shift in US policy, recognizing this government in exile. Joining me for an exclusive conversation for the first time is the newly appointed Special Coordinator for Tibetan Affairs of the Trump administration, Assistant Secretary Robert Destro. Many thanks for joining us here on India Today, sir.
Well, thank you for having me. Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to be on your program.
Let me begin with asking you what your official position. What is the United States of America's official position on the status of Tibet?
Yes, we were very pleased to have Mr. Sangay come to visit with us here at the State Department, and it reflects the very serious, the way we take Tibet very, very seriously. We are in full agreement with His Holiness the Dalai Lama that there's a third way, and that we want to see the Chinese government more engaged with the CTA and with the Dalai Lama, His Holiness himself.
Secretary Destro, does the United States of America support a fully autonomous Tibet within China, or does it support a separate state of Tibet, a sovereign Tibet?
No, we have consistently taken the position that Tibet should be autonomous within China, and our goal is to see that the Chinese respect the autonomy of the Tibetan people within China. That's the third way that we have spoken about, and that they respect not only the culture but also the language and the religion.
So there are reports, like in Xinjiang now, from Tibet, that there are labor camps with 500,000 Tibetans being forced into labor. What's your report on such labor camps in Tibet, and how is the United States of America reacting to such labor camps?
Well, we have heard exactly what you've just talked about more and more Tibetans being forced into labor camps. We are trying in the way we usually do to confirm or deny what's going on, but those are the reports. They're very disturbing. They would be very consistent with the reports and with the evidence coming out of Xinjiang that in effect the cancer of forced labor is spreading from Xinjiang into Tibet.
So what is the kind of action that the United States of America is contemplating against China for having such labor camps and forcing Tibetans into labor?
Well, we have taken very strong positions against forced labor wherever it takes place, and we would be taking the same actions. We have, if we find out that goods are produced with forced labor, they can be excluded from coming into the country. We have imposed visa and other sanctions on Chinese officials. So we will be using every tool, diplomatic and other, at our disposal to make sure that we protect our own market and our own laborers from competition by forced labor.
Okay. What has been the fallout, if any, of the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act of 2018 that was signed by President Trump into law despite protests from the Chinese?
Well, we take a very strong position that all people should be allowed access to Tibet, that Americans should be allowed access to Tibet, that Tibetans should be allowed to freely go back and forth. We're in favor of access, and that's what the law was all about.
Assistant Secretary Robert Destro, many thanks for joining us here on India Today.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Here's a look at some other news from across the world and World at a Glance.
A powerful earthquake hit Greece and Turkey on Friday, 30th October, causing buildings to collapse and a sea surge that flooded streets in the Turkish resort city of Izmir. Greek public television said the quake also caused a mini tsunami on the eastern Aegean Sea island of Samos, damaging buildings. The US Geological Survey said the 7-magnitude earthquake was registered 14 kilometers off the Greek town of Karlovski in Samos. The Turkish government's disaster agency reported a lower magnitude of 6.6 for the quake, while Greece's seismological agency said it measured at 6.7. New Zealanders voted to legalize euthanasia in a binding referendum this week. The euthanasia measure, which would also allow assisted suicide, will become effective in November next year. It would apply to adults who have terminal illnesses and are likely to die within 6 months and are enduring unbearable suffering. Other countries that allow some form of euthanasia include the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Canada, Belgium and Colombia. Preliminary results have shown that in all likelihood New Zealanders would not legalize recreational marijuana use. Two lesbian couples tied the knot in a mass wedding held by Taiwan's military. This was the first such occasion when same-sex couples were allowed to wed and celebrated at a military ceremony, making it a historic moment. Taiwan is the only place in Asia to have legalized same-sex marriage. More than 4,000 such couples have been married since May 2019 legislation. The Day of the Dead celebrations in Mexico this year is a very low-key affair. The pandemic has forced authorities in most parts of Mexico to close cemeteries to prevent the traditional observances when entire families clean and decorate tombs on 31st October. The busy markets wore deserted looks across the country. So far, Mexico reported more than 900,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases and over 90,000 deaths.
There is a lot happening in the length and breadth of the United States of America when it comes to campaigning, which is at its peak. Here's a wrap-up on what's happening across the United States of America.
The confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court will secure a conservative court majority for years to come in the US. The expedited nomination days before the 2020 election is also motivating voters on both sides of the fence. Barrett was confirmed to the Supreme Court on 26 October by a deeply divided Senate. Republicans overpowered Democrats to install US President Donald Trump's nominee. Trump is touting the confirmation as a political win. Trump's choice to fill the vacancy of the late liberal icon Ruth Bader Ginsburg potentially opens a new era of ruling on abortion, the Affordable Care Act, and even his own election. Hackers have stolen $2.3 million from the Wisconsin Republican Party's account. The party noticed the suspicious activity on October 22nd and contacted the FBI. The fund was being used to help re-elect President Donald Trump in the key battleground state of Wisconsin. The FBI is investigating the matter. A 39-year-old Boston resident was charged with setting a Boston ballot drop box on fire and damaging dozens of ballots on Sunday, 25th October. The FBI is investigating the fire. There were 122 ballots inside the box and 87 of them were still legible and are able to be processed. US President Donald Trump cast his vote in the West Palm Beach of Florida on 24th October. After voting in a reference to his mistrust of political voting, Trump told the media that he had just cast the ballot in the safest way, that he voted for a guy named Trump. Most members of the Trump administration, his campaign team and family have opted for mail-in vote.
I voted for a guy named Trump.
Thank you very much, everybody.
The US presidential elections will be held on the 3rd of November. It is predicted to have a record-breaking turnout this time around, with many using postal ballots, mail-in ballots, as well as turning up for early voting. But there are many who are asking questions about the process of the elections and the results. Here's all that you need to know about the US elections. Unlike India, voting in the United States of America is not a federal but a state subject. Many states started the voting process weeks ago. Early voting numbers have already crossed 60 million and is expected to cross 100 million, maybe even touch 150 million votes.
Election night 2020 is actually quite potentially election week or weeks in the US. And this is because there are a lot more people voting by mail this year than in the past. We forecast that a majority of votes will be cast either early in person or by mail, or by people filling out their ballot at home and then dropping them off and less than half will be conventional election day, walk up to the polling places voting.
While the date of voting is not fixed, the final day of election is. The process has to end on the 3rd of November, and that date could mark the beginning of what could be a lengthy counting period. Counting begins once polls close. Some states plan to report results by the night of 3rd November itself, but there are others who expect that their counting process could take longer, depending on when they begin counting mail-in ballots. Around 30 states allow fixing of errors by voters to ensure their votes don't become invalid. Each state begins to certify its results from the 10th of November, which is subject to delay if there is a recount. After the votes are in and counting ends, there are 2 dates to watch out for. The 8th of December, by which all states should have completed their certification of the results, including disputes, that's challenges, and recounts. There are a few states that get more time, like California, which have a slower process. The other date to remember is the 14th of December, when electors cast their ballots to choose the President of the United States of America and send it to Washington, D.C. In the US system, the individual voter does not directly elect the president. The individual votes in a state decide which way the state's electoral college would vote. The electoral college is formed with the selection of the electors. No federal official, elected or appointed, can become an elector. The total number of electors are 538, accounting for 435 representatives from the Congress and 100 senators. And there are 3 additional electors from the District of Columbia. In each state, the candidate who wins most of the electors wins the entire state's electoral college votes.
Specifically, each state is awarded 1 elector for each member in the House of Representatives, plus 2 for each senator. For example, Florida has 27 U.S. House Representatives and 2 senators, and is thus awarded 29 electoral votes.
But even in this winner-takes-the-entire-state system, there are 2 exceptions. The states of Maine and Nebraska divide up their electoral college votes according to the proportion of the popular votes each candidate receives. So are the electors bound to follow popular votes? No. There is no federal or constitutional law that requires electors to follow the results of the popular votes of their states. There have been instances in the past when electors have gone against the will of the people. They're called faithless electors, but that's rare. The electoral college system usually reflects the will of the people, that is, the popular vote. But it is possible to win a majority of the popular vote and yet not win a majority of the electoral votes. In the history of US elections, there have been 5 instances when someone lost the popular vote but won the electoral college, and 2 of the instances are from recent history. In the elections of 2000, Democrat candidate Al Gore had the popular vote, but George W. Bush of the Republican Party took the electoral votes and became president. In 2016, Republican Donald Trump won the Electoral College, but Democrat Hillary Clinton had won the popular vote. So finally, what it takes to win the US presidential race is to cross the 270 mark out of the total 538 electoral votes, no matter how the general public might have voted. That's all in this edition of World Today, but
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.